$1 million race at Eldora, and Davenport won it. He was in a B main the next night. Now, if I won $1 million on a Friday night, I would not function on Saturdays. Hi, I'm Joey Coulter, and this is the Derek Pernesiglio Show.
Can I drive you?
Hi, everybody. Welcome to another episode of the Derek Pernesiglio Show. I'm Teddy Roosevelt, and we have Joey Coulter joining us as a guest today in the studio. And Joey, good to have you here. Thank you for coming in and doing this with us. We know you got a busy weekend coming up.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I'm excited.
It's pretty neat to have you here. It's cool to also see you racing in the modifieds because, you know, that was my background growing up. And just to see someone who had come from the truck series and had, you know, success in the truck series and rookie of the year and now is, you know, running pavement, asphalt, modified. What made you want to get into one of those too? Because you've run everything, like dirt late models, trucks, you know, pavement late models.
Yeah, so it's funny. I actually had a fan walk up to me. It was one of the races at the end of last year, and somebody that I met way back, like late model stock, past late model days, you know, 2008, 9, and 10. And then I, you know, went and did the truck stuff and then ended up dirt racing. And I ran into him at a dirt track somewhere. And they were like, what are you doing here? And then I ran into him at this modified race. And then it's like, what are you doing? Just making a career out of showing up at random places and random cars and driving? I'm like, well, I guess. It's fun. No, so we, back when COVID was going on, Randy Renfro, that's been a part of my career in Coulter Motorsports for a long time, he called me and said, hey, I got this modified that I built. I'm going to sell it. Do you want to come race it before we get rid of it? And I'm like, yeah, let's go. Like, so we went to Florence and went down there and had a pretty good night. We qualified on the pole, set the track record at the time, and ended up winning the race. First time at the track, first time in the car.
And that was your first smart win, right?
Yeah. And so he didn't sell the car after that. And the rest, that's my modified career so far. Like it just was this one-off thing. You know, Randy had a progressive motor that we had run in the supers, and he I don't even remember where he got the chassis from, but it was literally just going to be a side project for him to put together and flip. And then we ended up racing it and having a great time. He loved working on them. I had a blast driving them. I came back next year, the following year, and ran a race at Caraway. And I think we finished second or third. And then Brandon Ward got in the car and won like 4 or 5 races the end of that year. And then I was talking to my parents, and Harold Holly were trying to figure out what to do with the Rum Runner racing side of things. I wanted to keep dirt racing, but in order for me to, we were living out in Texas at the time, and in order for me to dirt race at the level I wanted to, I had to race 40, 50 times a year, and I just couldn't do it. We had 2 kids and living that far away, it just wasn't really feasible. But I wanted to.
That's like a bigger grind than the NASCAR schedule too.
Oh yeah, it's insane.
Huge.
Like it's insane. And like no racing is easy, but when you go through like sort of the weekly turnaround of a dirt car compared to almost anything else, it's
the cleaning is amazing.
Yeah, like your entire day on Monday is just getting the dirt off. Yep. Like you're not even fixing anything yet. You're just cleaning it so you can figure out what to fix. So I wanted to race more. And Harold and I were talking, and he's like, well, you know, Foltz has got this modified over at his shop that, you know, Newman ran a couple times and he'd sell it if we buy it. And I'm like, okay, let's give it a shot. And so we built that car, ran it a few times, ended up winning a race at Caraway with Harold on the Rum Runner side while Brandon was driving Randy's car. And we all got hooked. Right. I love driving the cars. Harold loves working on them, and it's been a blast.
So the car that you have your last modified win in is the gray car that you're driving now?
Yeah. Okay. So that's the car that we bought from Foltz over at Fury.
Okay. Yep. So you have a win in both cars.
Yeah.
You have a win in both cars. Okay. What is it about the modifieds that you like so much? Because we have a huge modified following on this show, and for a guy like you who doesn't have that background, what is it that draws you into them?
I mean, if you can't get excited about 15 inches of tire, then like I don't know what's going to make your day. But that, I mean, to me, it's the fastest car that I've ever driven that doesn't survive on aerodynamics.
Okay.
Like ever since, I mean, even the super late models and stuff back in the past days, like those didn't rely on air, but they were at least a little sensitive to it, depending on where you were. Obviously, the ARCA cars and the trucks, the 1.5 mile stuff, it's do or die.
Yeah.
The dirt cars, the way the bodies have gotten and stuff, I mean, they're almost more aero dependent because of all the hike and stuff they're getting out of the bodies and things like that.
It's crazy. You look at them, and they almost look like, the nose goes one way, the body is square, and then the two quarter panels go off this way. And I know why they're doing it. They're doing it for side pressure when the thing gets yawed out going in a corner.
Yeah, exactly. And it's just funny because like we got these big, huge haulers to go do all this dirt racing, and we can't even push the cars in them without taking the doors halfway off because they just don't fit. It's funny, but the modifieds are just, you're over 600 horsepower, under 3,000 pounds, under 2,800 pounds.
Mm-hmm.
And all that tire, you can't bump stop, you can't coil bind. So you just put it on the ground and just drive it for as long as the tires stay on. Like it's fun. It's a completely different experience for me. That I was telling, so we got a real good friend of mine, Patrick Starpoli's actually driving our second car this weekend at Franklin County.
I saw him. He's on the entry list.
Yeah.
I heard that name from K&N days or K&N West.
Yeah. So funny story about that. Hopefully I don't get him in trouble. But so when he got selected to do that Peak Dream Challenge, he was actually living with my wife and I in Concord.
Okay.
And so the whole time he was doing it, I was like helping prep him and stuff like that. And the last night was so funny. We're sitting around, had my iRacing rig upstairs, and the last thing they had to do was a pit stop. And I said, Patrick, because none of them I don't think had ever done a live pit stop before. And I said, Patrick, listen, all you got to do is stop on your marks. I said, I promise you, half of them are going to try to look like professionals, and they're going to blow right through the sign. I said, the other half are going to get scared, and they're going to creep in there, or they're going to stop short.
Okay.
I'm like, so we probably made 50 runs on iRacing just pulling in the pit box, like the angles coming in, that turn in, all that stuff.
Okay.
And so he ends up winning the competition. Then he gets to go race with McAnally, goes out there and wins at Irwindale. Him and I grew up at the same short track down in Florida at Hialeah Speedway.
Mm-hmm.
So we've known each other forever. He's got this really cool opportunity. He's a retina specialist.
That's what I heard. He's a doctor, right?
Yeah, it's fun. It's hard not to brag on him because he's like ridiculously smart, and he's a pretty darn good race car driver. So he's got this really cool deal, and thankfully, like I was super appreciative of it. But he brought it to us to run a second car for him, and we went out there and tested last week. Had a blast. He took right to it, so I'm excited.
Where'd you go test that?
We tested at Franklin County.
Oh, okay. So you've got some laps there already.
Yeah,
okay.
yeah. So it should be a lot of fun, but it's cool having him in the second car this week because it'll give us some extra information and give him some new experience too.
Well, that, and it's also another car in the field, which is definitely something that Smart will love.
Yeah.
And man, the Smart Tour is just becoming so cool, isn't it? I mean, after I don't know if you were around for the Whelen Southern Modified Tour days, but when that went away, a lot of guys were left themselves shrugging, going, what are we going to do now? And, when the few small series came about, I forgot what the names of them were. One of them was the Coma Unwind Series. Then there was SMRS. But when Chris brought the Smart Modified Tour back, it's huge, man. I mean, you look at the competition, too. It's just as competitive as a NASCAR Whelen Modified Tour event.
I think so. I did shot a video with some of the guys for the Smart Tour a couple weeks ago. And one of the things I brought up with them was that, like, I can't think of another, regional series that has the spread of experienced drivers that the Smart Tour does. Like, you've got guys that have only run modifieds that are legends. You've got guys that have run all sorts of different short track races and won in everything. You've got Cup champions, SRX champions, right? Daytona 500 winners. You got guys like me that have kind of experienced all of it, and we all get in these badass cars on these racetracks and try not to wear our tires out in 100 laps. Like, it puts on a great show, and I think it's because we've got so many different backgrounds of really experienced drivers. And then you throw in the younger kids, right, like Carson and Luke, who maybe they don't have all of the experience, but they've been watching it since before they could walk.
Right.
So, and I've seen that in racing before. Like, the first person I think of outside of them is Josh Richards. Mm-hmm. Right? He didn't race until he was older, but he was always around it. So when he started, it's like he'd been doing it. You know,
he's able to absorb it faster.
Yeah,
I get you.
And so I think it's just it's a great bunch of drivers, and we all rag on Chris Williams a lot, but I mean, he does a good job with what he's got going, and it's growing faster than I think anybody expected.
Yeah, that's one of the things that I like too about Chris. He's really taken the lead on this. And the other thing too that I like what he's done is that Chris didn't have to do this. Like, it's something that he wanted to do, and it has grown and become huge. You were talking about the young kids coming up and starting out like so young. When you started out, you technically started out like at what, 8 or 9, right? Which is old nowadays because now they're putting kids in cars at 4.
Yeah.
So at 8 or 9, it was go-karts for you, right?
Yeah. I started karts in 98 and ran them full time for 5 or 6 years. Did the Horseman Gold Cup National Tour, and then started getting into some short track stuff. And actually, that's when I met Patrick and his family, just transitioning from karts into stock cars, racing in Hialeah.
Was it road course or oval go-karts?
Road course.
Road course.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Four-stroke road course.
So your beginning of your career was no ovals at all.
Mm-mm. No, because it was growing up in Miami. It's other than like Hialeah, the only other thing I could race was boats. Like, that was about it.
And that's expensive.
Yeah. So, and for whatever reason, I think my dad still hates me for it, but I wanted to go car racing. But it's funny because every time we have a bad day at the racetrack, he'll just look at me and say, "We could be fishing," And but so when I started getting out of karts, started racing cars at Hialeah Speedway, and then that place shut down. That's the funny part about racing in Florida. It's basically you race somewhere until it closes, and then you got to go find somewhere else to race.
Yeah,
which is sad, but it's just how it is down there. But so ran Florida Pro Truck Series for a little bit after karts, and then
they just ran what, like New Smyrna and Sunshine, right?
Yeah,
and Auburndale.
Yeah, so back when I did it, there was Auburndale, Orlando Speed World, New Smyrna, Lakeland was still around, Sunshine. I never ran DeSoto. I think it was closed at the time, but my home track after Hialeah closed down was Punta Gorda. Over there on the West Coast, which is funny because that's where my home go-kart track was when everything in Miami closed down. So did that for a couple years, and then I don't know what we were thinking, but we went Hooters Pro Cup racing right after that.
Wait, hold on. So you're jumping ahead. So was your first oval race in a full-size car?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. So it wasn't even in a go-kart at all.
No,
okay,
no,
okay.
No, yeah. First oval race was in a car, and that was the path. Like when probably the third year we were kart racing, I was playing other sports. Like I was into soccer and baseball, but I couldn't run. So I was like, okay, well this racing thing doesn't require running. So maybe this is it. And I just fell in love with it. And like our third year doing it, it's like, okay, this is real. This is something we really want to do. And, you know, fortunately we had the ability to go run up and down the road and go race around the, you know, run that whole national tour.
Did anyone in your family race before you?
So my dad raced karts when he was younger, just for fun, really. He's always been a race fan. Like, I grew up watching races. Like, I remember being at my grandma's watching Speed Vision and like Two Wheel Tuesdays and the Grid, and then all the Formula One stuff over the weekend. Like, we were always watching racing, and then Saturday nights we were going to Hialeah Speedway. So okay. I've always been around it. And then just once I started doing it, it just became a passion. Like, and that's same with my dad. Like, it became our passion. And we just, from that point on, once we decided we were going to go racing, it's like, okay, that's we lived in Florida. How do we start moving towards like NASCAR? Because that's where I wanted to go.
Okay, so that was the goal.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it was really weird. I don't know where I hit my head, but when I was like 9 or 10 years old, I was telling people like I wanted to go to Georgia Tech and get a mechanical engineering degree and be a NASCAR driver. I have no idea why I picked Georgia Tech, but ended up at UNC Charlotte. So worked out.
You're close to the racing community.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I my geography got better as I got older. Figured out Charlotte was a little closer. But yeah, so we kind of set our sights on just trying to create an opportunity to get to NASCAR. And like the funny thing is when we started racing, like we didn't know what we were doing. Like the first year that we went racing, it was just in the back of my dad's Suburban, and we would just go show up, and like I don't think either of us knew whether we were rolling up to the grid to practice, qualify, or race. We just were going out and running laps, right? And if we got a trophy at the end, it was a race.
Okay.
And it was fun because that's how we learned. Then we met some people along the way that had racing backgrounds and started showing us how to race, and be competitive and things like that. And my dad, the way he describes it's really great. So we were racing karts, and when we started racing karts, because of the people he met, he was up here. Like, he knew how the karts worked. He could work on them, make them faster, and I was learning how to drive them. By the time we got out of karts, I could work on them, tell him what I needed. I could scale it, sitting in it,
right.
Do all that stuff. And we started getting into stock cars, and it's like, okay, I'm up here and he's down here. So at that point, he says, my job at that point was to put people around you that could make you successful.
Okay.
And that's exactly what he went to work doing. And it worked out great. So Tommy Steyer, which everybody in Florida knows, we unfortunately lost him a few years ago, but he was my first crew chief. And at the time, it was like totally normal. But looking back on it, my parents are crazy. So I was 15, 16 years old, going up and down the road across 75 over to Punta Gorda with a 21-year-old crew chief and his 22-year-old best friend by ourselves.
Bunch of kids.
Yeah.
That's it.
And at the time, like I said, it was completely normal because Tommy was older than I was. He'd been racing forever. I worked at his dad's shop with him. So it was totally normal. But yeah, looking back on it, I was like, my parents are nuts. Like, just sending us up and down the road to go stock car racing. And, man, we had so much fun. That's what really set the hook for me, stock car racing. Like, I fell in love with it.
And that was the truck?
That was the pro trucks.
The pro trucks.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. So you got like 4 wins in those, right?
Mm-hmm.
And those are like late model trucks, right?
Yeah, they're closer to, it's like a really nice street stock.
Okay.
With a truck body. It's stock frame, Monte Carlo frame,
mm-hmm.
crate motor or a 305, and pretty simple. But it's still is. It's something different now. I don't think there's much of a traveling series anymore, but
mm-hmm.
it's a great like intro series.
To get going.
Yeah, it's perfect.
So from there, you went to Hooters Pro Cup, USIR Pro Cup Series. But I heard an interesting story that you didn't qualify for your first race, but they still let you race.
How
did that happen?
I don't know. I was left out of that politicking conversation.
How old were you at the time?
Let's see. I would have been probably 17. Yeah, it was. That was a terrible decision to go Pro Cup racing. It really was.
Why?
Because we weren't ready for that type of racing. Like, it was way bigger than what we were capable of doing. Now, again, the great part about that is if we hadn't done that, we wouldn't have met Randy. So that's when Randy Renfro started working with us. And that's how I got into running more late models and stuff up in the Carolinas, was through Randy. Mm-hmm. So that was the huge positive that came out of it. And I got to race with some of the best short track drivers I think that have ever raced, which taught me a lot about earning respect from drivers, not just like, okay, great, you've got a fast race car, now you got to pass Bobby Gill, like, good luck.
Right.
So it was a huge learning experience. Looking back at it, like, I wish we'd have been a little bit better prepared, or I wish we would have done some more late model stuff and then gone to that, because I think we could have been successful, because we really weren't. Like, we were there, we showed up, we raced, but again, like, I got tons of laps at tons of racetracks that I would have never seen
around talented
anything.
veterans too. I mean, God, you had Bobby Gill, Stacy Purrier, Marty Lindley. I mean, all those guys.
Yeah, yeah. It was an incredible series. Like, and that's, again, like, looking back, kind of knowing what I didn't know then. I was like, my gosh, we were like way out of our league.
Did you feel that same way when you went to ARCA, or did you kind of have an idea, being that you were in a heavier car and all of that?
No, so that's where Harold came in. When we went ARCA racing, we just hired Harold at the end of 2008, and Pro Cup was unfortunately kind of on the decline. And
you're still working with him today, right?
Yeah.
In the modifieds?
Yeah.
So Randy and Harold are both working with you in the modified team.
Yep.
It's amazing how that all comes about.
When you, like, race anything, really, it's all about finding good people. And when you find good people, everybody works well together. We've had tons of success, and so we've done everything we can to keep them around, keep them happy. So it's been awesome. But yeah, so we got Harold, and which was funny because, again, my parents are crazy. We sat down in our conference room in our shop there in Huntersville, and my dad's like, look, I'm going to sit over here and just listen and make sure nobody's trying to give you the runaround. He's like, but you're going to hire your crew chief.
He left that up to you?
Yeah.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
okay.
And I guess I would have been 18 at the time. Yeah, because this was 08 going into 09. Yeah, so I was 18, fresh into college, so I knew everything. So he's like, yeah, you're going to, we got all these people coming in that sent in resumes. He's like, so you're going to talk to him, you're going to interview him. And there was some pretty awesome people sitting in that room that day.
Really? Like who?
So Doug Rickert was one of them.
No kidding.
Wes Ward. Let's see, Doug George. I'm trying to think. There was 6 or 7.
A lot of talented guys.
Yeah, it was kind of neat. Like, really cool. And then this Harold guy walks in, and definitely kind of like the most intense out of all of them. And I had told my dad after our second year Pro Cup racing, I'm like, look, I'll give this like one more good shot, but if we can't get it together, like, we need to go find something else to do, because I'm not just going to keep
in Pro Cup.
Yeah.
Okay.
Or whatever, whether it's Pro Cup or, at the time, I think we were still
X1R
talking.
or something
Yeah.
like that.
Yeah. And he's like, all right, so you're gonna hire your crew chief. So I talked to Harold, and I was like, all right, this is, if somebody's gonna turn this around, it's gonna be this guy, because he is the polar opposite of me. Like, I'm quiet, calm, collected, and this guy's nuts. And just the way he talked about cars, like, you could tell he knew race cars. Didn't matter what they were, he knew them. So long story short, we hired him. We went and tested at Rockingham, and I was like, all right, this is gonna work. And then we made the decision then to go ARCA racing, because we just felt like there was a good opportunity for us to get in. Justin Allgaier was getting out, so we ended up getting a bunch of his equipment. That's how we ended up with the 16 number.
Okay.
In ARCA. So we got that stuff, went to Daytona and rented a car from Bobby Gearhart, which was, again, like, really cool to go down there and speedway race with him, you know?
Right, with all the wins that he has there at Daytona.
Yeah, so that was really cool. And then when I started in that series, you know, Frank Kimmel was still running. So it was a whole nother group of drivers that I looked up to, that I now got to go learn from and earn respect from. So really cool.
Do you think that's a problem we're seeing now with the veterans aren't there for these kids to go to and lean on?
Oh yeah, for sure. And that's the space that I try to fill with all the driver find stuff. Is like, when I was younger, I had to learn from veterans every stage of the game, or even late model stock racing. It was Deke McCaskill, Jamie Caudill. Like, I had to go beat those guys. You know, Philip Morris. Like, in the supers, it's Brandon Ward. I'm gonna forget a whole bunch of names because I'm trying to remember them now. But
well, you've raced with everyone.
Yeah, but it's like every stage, like every rung up the ladder, there's this whole new set of badasses. And not that there isn't a lot of talent out there now, but it's all new talent. There's not many people out there that have been racing forever.
Right.
And it makes it, I think it's challenging for these kids, because then they have to get all the way to trucks or even Xfinity before they have to race against somebody that's been doing it for 30 years.
Well, Todd Bodine and I chatted, and even in the truck series, you only have maybe one or two guys that are veterans. You've got Crafton, Ben Rhodes, and I'm trying to think of who else. I'm drawing a blank, but you know, it's you need those guys. You need that wisdom. You know, I mean, I had it when I raced midgets. You know, we would go and lean on the older guys, and besides teaching you how to drive and stuff, they also taught you demeanor after the race. You know, if you're pissed off or angry or something like that. So it was more than just wisdom on the track, it was off it too. Yeah, and it's, you know, those guys aren't doing it because they can. Like, that's their job. Like, that's how they put food on their table, and that's how they've been putting food on their table. It's not like they just got the opportunity, right? Like, that's been their job. And the way that the sport works right now, if you're fortunate enough to get a shot, you've got to figure out how to adopt that mindset, because those are the guys that are the best of the best. You know what I mean? Like, those are the guys that are the hungriest. And it's hard to teach a young person that never has to race against it until they door slam one of them and then end up taking a ride to the infield care center. Yeah. Well, one of the other questions too that we pose to a lot of the guests is, nowadays, what is the big rush with putting kids at the top level of racing? I mean, because you are, for all intents and purposes, a young driver. You know, you probably came into into ARCA and trucks as a young driver. So what is it now that we're trying to get these teenagers pushed into the top levels?
I don't know. I've never really understood it. I've always been one to, you know, encourage like gathering experience, like running laps. You know, there's no better training than seat time.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't care what it's in. If you can go drive something, go drive it. But I've never understood the rush to just hurry up and get there, because getting there is one thing, staying there is the real challenge.
Yeah.
You know, I think some of it is just, it's easy to get caught up in like the momentum, but the thing is like, it doesn't matter how good things are going. Racing's always going to get harder. Like something's going to change. Somebody's going to find something you haven't found yet. And you're going to go back to the middle of the pack and have to climb your way back up. And if you haven't taken the time to learn how to learn, you're never going to get out of that middle of the pack once you get there, because it's hard to explain. Like it gets so complicated, especially now when you get up in the higher ranks, because you get 20 minutes of practice.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you can't go test. You don't get an hour and a half to figure it out. You get 20 minutes, and you know, there's a whole bunch of rules about what you can and can't change even in those 20 minutes. So
you're talking about in the modifieds now.
Well, even for us, the practices are short, but I was talking about like on the NASCAR side, the top 3 series. Like you get there, you've got 20 minutes to tune your race car. Well, if you've fast tracked your way to that level and haven't taken the time to master anything, it's way harder. It's got to be way harder.
I have no problem with kids racing. Don't get me wrong. I think there's definitely a place in the sport for kids to race. And when some of these kids hit 15 from starting from 5, yes, granted, they've got a decade of driving experience. And can they drive this type of car? Yes. But I think it's a question of should over could. You know, should we be putting children in these high horsepowered machines at such a young age? I mean, can they drive? Yes, absolutely. Should we be doing it? That's the question we should be asking.
Yeah, it's a tough one, because there's, you know, again, like if you look at the Smart Tour, you've got, you know, Carson Lofton, Luke Baldwin, and like, to be honest, I couldn't even tell you how old they are, but they're young. And you compare them to the average age of the rest of us, they're really young.
They're really young, yeah.
But the difference is they've been taught by veterans. Like they've been taught by the same group of people that taught me, basically, right? Like, so they've got that, I call it the old school mindset. And like, it's funny because a lot of people I work with, when it comes to crew chiefs and drivers, I tell all the crew chiefs, I'm like, ask your driver if they've ever used MapQuest. If the answer is no, then they're not going to think like you. If the answer is yes, then you've got a shot. And that old school mindset is, it's like it's MapQuest. You got to problem solve, right? First you got to type the right address in, and then you got to follow written direction. There's no blue line moving on your screen,
right?
Like, and then you got to turn it around and do it backwards.
Yeah, and
right?
Sometimes watch your odometer to see if you went as many miles as it says.
Yeah, exactly. So that there's a difference in just the way that people think nowadays, and that's how the world works. But I definitely agree. Like, there is a difference between they can do it and they should do it. But at the end of the day, it all comes down to what did they learn before they got there, and are they learning while they're there? If the answer is yes, they're probably going to do just fine. If it's no, then who knows?
The great thing, though, like you said with like Carson Lofton and Luke Baldwin, is they also came, they came from good stock. You know, I mean, Brian has won multiple races. Bobby Lofton had won modified races back in the day too. Like, they knew. I knew Carson. I had a feeling Carson was going to be fast when he got into modifieds, because I saw him. He first started racing outlaw karts at Millbridge, and even in his first couple of races in those, he was quick. Like, he picked it up right away.
Yeah.
So when I saw him in a modified for the first time, I knew he was going to pick it up right away. I didn't realize he was going to win as much as he did, but he's been doing that. But anyway, back to you. So back to the ARCA stuff. when you started your ARCA team, you didn't go drive for a team. You guys started your entire team and then went racing, which is hard to do nowadays.
Yeah. Yeah. And like, fortunately we had some equipment and we had some really good people that we picked up Pro Cup racing. And so we kind of had the beginning stages of some good infrastructure and good people. And when we met the Allgaiers and when they were selling their team off, it's like, okay, well now we can get this pretty good proven equipment. We had a really good relationship with PME already, and they did our motors in the ARCA stuff for the first couple years, I think, first year for sure. And so it was kind of an easy transition, and especially having Harold on board, he knew those cars. That was what he won hundreds of races on. I mean, he knew what he was doing. So the transition for us wasn't super hard. It made me the weak link in the chain, which ended up being okay because Harold was able to figure me out pretty quick and start giving me what I needed out of the car. And then Randy was still working with me. So I still had this really awesome support system. So basically it was, all right, let's go learn these new racetracks. And again, I had the opportunity to learn from the best. The first time I went to Salem, I just sat on pit road until Ken Schrader backed out. And when he backed out, I backed out. And I just followed him and followed him and followed him. And even in the race, like we ended up qualifying pretty good. I tucked in behind him, and if he took off, I took off. I just followed him. And that's how I started learning those racetracks and learning those cars, was from guys like him and Kimmel and Gearhart and that crowd.
So when you had gone from Pro Cup to ARCA, that is probably also when you started your super speedway racing too. Then so was the first race out Daytona?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
So what is that like for you? Also living in Florida, knowing Daytona is just down the road. What was that like when you rolled out there for the first time to race?
It was crazy, and it's one of those things you can't imagine it until you go do it. Mm-hmm. And I'll never forget. We went down for the test and out there running laps, and the first running laps around there by yourself is kind of like going to the chassis dyno. It's really cool the first couple times, and then it's like, all right, we're gonna sit in line for 30 minutes, we're gonna go run 2 laps like we're driving down the highway. So it's like it almost starts to get boring, and then you start drafting practice, and it's amazing how quick the wick gets turned up when you got to do it with other people, especially people that you don't know and don't know you. And there's literally conversations like, well, I'm going to follow you first, or you're going to follow me first because I don't trust you. Like,
oh, really? So there's that.
Yeah, because nobody wants their cars torn up by some kid, at a test.
Rookie, you don't know how to draft.
Yeah.
All that.
Yeah. And in the ARCA intro video is hilarious because it's just like, it could be a whole Thrills and Spills video of just don't do this. And so it's a little bit intimidating, but once you just get used to it, it does eventually become just another type of race. There's just a lot of you all trying to chase this yellow line. And it was going great for us. Like, we were staying out of trouble, and there was a wreck right behind me, and the caution came out, and they started wrecking in front of me. And it was funny because it was like, as I'm dodging cars and stuff, it was like a Days of Thunder moment. I'm like driving through the smoke, just waiting for a car to pop out somewhere. I get all the way through the wreck. I had downshifted to like second gear, keyed the radio up, was telling Harold that I just brushed doors with somebody, but I'm okay. Somebody came from like 3.5 weeks back and just clobbered me. Like
3.5 weeks.
So the funny part was, I don't remember who it was, but when you go back and watch the race, like, that guy had to miss the first wreck,
right,
and the second wreck,
right,
to hit me. It was spectacular. Like, so that was my first super speedway experience, and it never really got better after that.
How much do you have to change your drive? I mean, how much of a new learning experience was it going from short tracks and then having to also do the aero type of racing? Because, you know, there's the cars that get sucked around, side drafting, you know, all that stuff. How much new stuff do you have to learn?
Well, there was a lot, but ESPN has great coverage, so. Uh, but you know, it was a ton. But like again, I had so many good people around me that it was. I don't want to say it was easy to learn, but I had access to whatever information that I wanted to get.
Yeah.
And that was fantastic. Like, you know, Harold had introduced me to guys in the truck and the Xfinity side. Randy knew a bunch of people, because we started off, you know, running with Bobby Gearhart. Like, I had that connection and stuff like that. I had already known Schrader from some other stuff, so I had a lot of people that I could go to talk through things with. After that, it was just laps. You know, we were able to go test some then, thankfully. So I got to go see tracks before I had to go race there, which was a big help for me. But the air was fun to figure out, because those cars, especially then, I mean, they were twisted up about as much as you could get.
Yeah, those are the steel body cars,
yeah,
right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, those were just awesome, and like it was fun learning. You know, that was the first time I'd ever had a short track car or an intermediate car or a road course car. Or, you know what I mean? Like,
right.
I've had two cars. You have this car and that car. Like, that's it. So it was neat starting to learn all those different packages and how your driving style has to be different for each package and even each car depending on where you were going. So it was really cool.
Like what? Like what kind of driving style would you have to change?
Like the funny thing about high horsepowered stock cars is the faster you're going, the slower you move. So Michigan, you're running 2.0 shit at the end of the front stretch, but your hand speed is just smooth. Like you're not driving like you're going 200 miles an hour.
Right.
You're being as smooth and as accurate as you can be. And even someplace like, you know, Salem, it's crazy elbows up, but it's the smoother you are, the faster you go. Mm. And for something that weighs that much, you're moving around that racetrack. So that was interesting. And then like the dirt races in ARCA were just insane. Like, that was the first time I'd ever been on dirt.
Oh, really?
Yeah. I know that there's the joke that goes around back and forth, but when I went to Springfield for the first time, I was like, dirt is for farming. Like, that's what they do with dirt. And I was blown away by that. Like, I had never experienced anything like that in my life.
What blew you away?
Just that this car is not supposed to be on this racetrack. Like,
why am I here?
Yeah,
what
are we doing? Like, how does this work?
Was it fun for you?
Oh yeah, it was fun.
Okay, all right.
It was fun, and it but just that first, like, the first few laps where you're just trying to get around the racetrack, and it won't turn, it won't stop, it won't go. There's mud everywhere. Mm-hmm. The tires.
Track gets one groove. It gets narrow too.
Yeah.
Like the groove during the race.
Yeah.
You get out of that into the brown, and it's like sliding on powder.
Yeah. Yeah. It's, and then the craziest thing there too is the rear wheels will slip inside the tires and get off balance.
Really?
And it will shake your teeth out.
Really?
Yeah. It happens all the time.
I never knew that.
Yeah, and that's just things.
They'll spin on the rim?
Yeah, because they're not bead locked, okay. And since it's a bi-sply tire, not a radial, and again, the cars are so heavy, you're running lower air pressures to try to get the
Sidewall,
tire
you
to
leaning
clean.
on the
Oh
sidewall
yeah,
too.
yeah.
Okay, all right, yeah, I get that.
So they just move around, and again, like when you've never done it before, and all of a sudden you're just
So
like
even going straight down the straightaway, the thing's
it's
chattering.
worse down the straightaway. The corners are your happy place.
That's funny.
Yeah.
Holy cow.
Yeah, it was wild, and that was the first time I raced. That was the first time I ever went to a road course in a stock car. We went to New Jersey Motorsports Park, and the first experience there was god awful. Like, shifter broke. I think I probably spent more time in the dirt than I did on the racetrack.
It's a narrow track. I've been there before.
Yeah, it is. It's fun. And then got to go to VIR with Chris Cook and test.
That's a cool road course.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And a cool race car driver. And I've never worked with somebody for such a short amount of time and like learned more than I could possibly absorb. Like,
really?
it was incredible. And then went right back to New Jersey after that test and finished second. And it was like, but that sort of like, those are the kind of things that I learned in ARCA that I wish the younger guys could learn now, because it's not just how to go fast. It's like the whole craft behind it, like learning how to go that fast.
What is the craft?
Just just walking a racetrack. Like, I always walked tracks, kart racing, short track racing, but the way that Chris showed me how to look at like the elevation changes, really pay attention. Like, okay, that this is, you're walking it and that looks like the best place to go, but you got a 3,400 pound tank. It's not going to do that. So this is where you make your speed, right? Brake like this. I mean, he got in the car. He basically just got me faster and faster all day long. And then he got in at the end of the day and was like, man, this is way too free. And I was like, really? I thought it's what I needed, because, all these fast sections. He's like, no, man. He's like, you get it so hooked up in the back that you get tight. And I just got this whole new perspective on like how to road race. Mm-hmm. And after that, it was like, okay, cool. This is actually fun now. I know what I'm doing. I'm not just trying to find second gear.
Was it one of those aha moments?
Oh yeah,
the light bulb goes on.
Huge.
Gotcha.
And then because up until then, like I thought, like I hated road course racing because I was terrible at it. Mm-hmm. And went and did that. Went and ran good at New Jersey. Got to run at Moroso in the rain, which was insane. But after that, I was like, this is fun. And that's really when I got hooked on how to figure things out racing, like how to just go get in some car somewhere and make it go fast. And that just helped me through the rest of ARCA in the trucks, some of the Xfinity stuff I got to do, and then on and on and on.
Well, that was going to come to the next step was after ARCA, Richard Childress come calling. How did that whole deal come together? Did he call you, or did you seek him out?
No, so they came to us. We growing up in Miami, we always went to the championship races at Homestead at the end of the year. And when we were Pro Cup racing, we were racing out of Florida, and we were actually working out of Daryl Gwynn's drag racing shop. So when we would go to Homestead, I would always fish in Daryl's charity fishing tournament.
Okay.
In the infield there. So in 2010, Austin ran like 5 or 6 ARCA races. And we ran side by side with each other at Iowa for like 40 laps, just swapping spots, just had a blast. And so we kind of kept tabs on each other after that. And I guess while I was out there fishing, Richard and somebody from their office was over there talking to my dad. And a couple weeks later, I get this email from somebody at rcrracing.com. I'm like, this is not real. But
You think someone's playing a joke?
yeah, so I called my dad and I was like, "Hey, you're on this. Like, go check your email. Like, you're on here." And he's like, "Well, I guess you better call him tomorrow." I'm like, "Yeah, I guess I better." So I went up there and we had a couple meetings and talked, and things came together. And next thing I knew, we were going to Daytona in a truck.
In a truck.
Yeah.
You were teammates with Ty at the time? Or was it Austin?
Austin the first year, and then Ty the second year.
Okay. And trucks were a great experience for you. I know you won at Pocono, and then you had that wild ride at Daytona. I mean,
Yeah.
talk about Aero. That's where Aero took you. Like, how? Well, I know how it happened. I mean, you got turned in the right rear, but take us through that.
So it's so funny. So we had a really, really awesome truck, and that was when the tandem drafting was just kind of becoming a thing, and that's probably the most insane thing I've done in a car or a truck is
tandem drafting,
especially in the truck because the bumpers didn't line up.
Mm-hmm.
So the push truck, like that front bumper piece, was actually underneath the rear bumper of the truck that you were pushing.
Okay.
So the straightaways were nuts. The corners were actually easier because, the back's pushing the nose down, right? When you're on the straightaways, it's actually picking it up.
Right.
So I was, like, the tandem stuff was terrifying, but I loved it because it was like, I don't have to think about it. I'm just going to hook up to the truck in front of me, and if he wrecks, I'm going to wreck. If we make it all the way back around, one of us is going to win.
You're just holding it wide open, shoving him all the way.
Pretty much. And like at the time, we were able to switch radio frequencies. So I don't think it's funny because I ended up pushing Todd Bodine at the end. And the funny part, I knew he was going to be mad at me after the race because my restart was terrible. I didn't get hooked up to him right away, but once I did get hooked up to him, we had a run. And like I remember coming off of 4, coming to the white flag, thinking it's like the momentum we had. I'm like, it's going to be him or me, and then I just have to decide how aggressive I'm going to be and how much I want Janet to yell at me after the race if I end up dumping Todd. So then next thing I know, I'm facing the wrong way and I'm starting to see more of the ground. And I'm like, oh, this isn't going to be good. I'm about to wipe out somebody's nachos. Because I knew exactly where I was in the racetrack. And I was like, this is going to hurt. Like, honestly, like, and I don't know if I was really thinking it right at the time, but my first thought was like, I hope I stay in the racetrack because I knew I was in that bend, of the tri-oval.
Mm-hmm.
So as soon as I came off the ground, I'm like, I'm going to get all of the fence. Like, and then the cartwheel started. And then the worst part was landing because all the wheels and tires were gone. So it was just flat back down on the frame rails, which hurt. And thankfully, the thing stayed in the racetrack and stayed together. But yeah, it was wild.
Took apart the fence pretty good.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I do remember seeing that. Did you have any injuries from that wreck?
No, thankfully. Sore? I was sore for a good long while. I remember I woke up the next day and I wasn't sore, and I was like, all right, we need to load up and get home now, because if I'm not sore today, that means tomorrow is going to be really bad.
And the day after that's worse.
Yeah. And I Sunday morning, I was laying in my bed watching the 500, just not moving.
Oh, no, that sucks. But yeah, you did have some success in the truck series. I mean, you had Rookie of the Year in 2011. You won a race in 2012. Did Richard just do away with the truck team?
Yeah. So this was where I started to just see how complex the racing world is. Like, basically, I had to make a business decision because at the time after Pocono, my phone started ringing a lot. But I loved being at RCR. Like, I got along with everybody. I felt like we all worked really well together. I loved the way they ran their team. Like I dove into all that stuff and just got a kick out of it. But basically what it came down to was, we had a lot of support behind us going into it, but we knew there was a time limit on it. So I had to, the next move that I made, we had to either find a way to generate more of our own sponsorship, or it was going to have to come from the team. And at the time at RCR, there was 4 Cup teams, 4 Xfinity teams, and 2.5 or 3 truck teams. I can't remember what they were going to, but
it's a lot.
Basically, I was kind of doing the math, and I'm like, there's a lot more big stuff in front of me on the totem pole because they're running a business, right? Like, those Cup cars have to be sponsored before anything else gets sponsored.
Right.
And then those nationwide cars, Xfinity cars, need sponsored before a truck does. Mm-hmm. So I kind of just understood where things were, and it's not that nobody was putting any effort in. Like, there was plenty of effort. It was just what are the chances that something is going to happen? KBM approached me, and they're obviously tied right in with Gibbs and all that, with Kyle. And it was, Parker Klingerman in the Xfinity car, mm-hmm. and then I was going to run the truck full time, and then Kyle was going to run like 10 races. So I was like, okay, they're kind of new. They're building a program, got a lot of support from Toyota. The line of sight, up the ladder is still there, and I'll be the truck, not a truck. That was the idea anyways. But we had to make a...
You mean like what their flagship driver for the truck team?
Yeah, because at the time when I signed with them, it was Parker in the 77. Right. I was going to be in the 18, and then Kyle was going to run like 10 races in 51. That was it. Mm-hmm. So that was the business decision. That was going to hopefully give me an opportunity to be in a position where it would be easier to find sponsorship, get sponsors, pick up whatever was bleeding over into KBM from Gibbs and all that.
So you thought of it as a way of being higher in the pecking order compared to RCR. Okay.
Yeah, just because of the size and the scope of everything. Mm-hmm. RCR put me in a few Xfinity races at the time. One of the first things KBM said is, we're getting you 5 races in a Gibbs car. And I was like, okay,
cool.
Sounds good.
All right.
So yeah, that was the first time I ever made like a business decision racing. Most of the time it was all like, performance related. What's the best? This was the first time I was ever like, okay, what's going to give me the best shot at staying somewhere? Mm-hmm. And it ended up just being awful. But
really?
Oh yeah, it was a terrible year.
Well, I mean, I know you didn't have a lot of luck. I mean, you finished 15th in the points, but what was it that was just the chemistry not there?
There was a lot of things, and like I definitely don't want to point fingers or anything, like because there was a massive amount of stuff I think that I could have done better during the whole that whole thing once it got really tough. But after we signed on, that's when they put the 54 deal together with Bubba Wallace, and then they filled out the schedule in the 51 truck. So they went from a 1.5 truck operation to a 3 truck operation just overnight. And they really didn't have the infrastructure at the time to support it the way that I was used to the infrastructure coming from RCR. And it was just totally different. Like, a truck's not a truck. Like, the Toyota bodies were different. The engine packages were different. And it took me a while to get adjusted to that because of not having good luck and just kind of getting lost in all of the chaos.
Was the aero handling different from the Toyota to the Chevy?
A little bit and it was a combination of the air and the engine package. So the simplest way to explain it is the Chevrolet packages, the crankshafts were heavier. So for, especially on the 1.5 mile stuff, if you crack the throttle a little bit, that rotating weight of the crank would just keep the thing going through the wind, and it wasn't that big a deal. The Toyotas had a much lighter crankshaft. So if you lifted, it was like, opening a parachute. And the way that I had gotten used to driving the trucks in the Chevrolet package just didn't work with the Toyotas. So I had to learn how to do it basically the way that Kyle was doing it. And we finally got there. It just, by the time I started figuring it out, we were already in such a mess that like we all hated each other, and like it was a tough year. And again, like it sucked, but it was a good learning experience, because the next opportunity I got was probably harder, but I felt like I was prepared for it because of all the growing pains I went through at KBM.
So you had difficulty, because after KBM was GMS.
Yeah.
You know what it sounds like? It sounds like the truck part of your career was the toughest part of your career, not because of the racing, but trying to figure out the business end of it.
Yeah, because it's easy to think, okay, I'm a driver, I'm just gonna get in this thing, go run around in circles for a little bit and go fast, and everybody will be happy. But it gets so much more intricate than that on the business side, and just, even just knowing where to go, right? Like, do you go hang out with these people, or you go hang out with these people, or do you go study for your engineering final? Like, there was a lot going on at the time. And
was it cliquey?
Not really. Just
okay.
It just, if you, it's that saying, not sometimes it's not what you know, it's who you know.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm a pretty introverted person anyways, but I was, a full-time student at UNC Charlotte, so I wasn't doing a lot of hanging out, period. Like, if I needed to go do a media appearance somewhere, I did. But other than that, I was either in the shop or I was at home studying, because I get accused of being a smart person, but I'm just a really efficient, dumb person. So I had to like really study a lot to just get by. Like, I was a C's get degrees kind of person, not because I was lazy, but because that was it. Like,
no, I get you. I was a C student through high school. I did excel a little bit in college because I wanted to be there.
Yeah.
But yeah, I get what you mean. But yeah, you had to study your ass off just to hopefully get that 80 or 85 grade,
just
right?
to get there. Yeah. And so balancing all of that, and then learning the business of things, and then, racing's full of a lot of great people, but racing's also full of a lot of people that will tell you whatever it is they think you want to hear.
Oh, I know.
And then you find out the truth's a little bit different. And so learning all of that, my dad, he comes up to me one day, he said, I figured this racing thing out. And I was like, well, good, tell me, because I need to know. And he's like, there's two kinds of people. There's snakes and there's alligators. He goes, it really doesn't matter whether it's a snake or an alligator. You just have to know which one you're dealing with. And I was like, yeah, that's it. It makes so much sense. Yeah, they're both going to bite you. It's just when and where,
Yeah.
And it's just it's a competitive sport. You're gonna run across things like that. It's part of the game, as I say. But
did you get tired of it? Is that why you kind of went away from the NASCAR stuff?
A little bit. I think some of it was I just kind of got, I guess you could say, just kind of got defeated. I had gotten a lot of, I had a lot of support, right? So you always end up, you have people in your camp that are telling you you're doing a good job and this, that, and the other thing. And then you sit down and you kind of look at the results and you're like, well, it's not very good. Or it's average, or it's mediocre, whatever you want to call it. When I went over to GMS, it was kind of like, this is the last shot kind of thing, because it was a really small team. They hadn't truck raced before. Mm-hmm. They ended up moving into our ARCA shop when we shut down our ARCA team over there in Huntersville. So that was kind of neat because it was my shop, like I felt like I was going to my shop every day, which was really cool.
So this was at the beginning of GMS starting out, because they did, eventually become a huge team.
Yeah, so they when I started working with them, they were running in the ARCA series with Spencer Gallagher, and I'm trying to remember how exactly I got brought into the fold. I know that Nick Moncher, that did my PR for a long time in ARCA, he was over there as one of the managers basically, and I think he was the one that got the conversation started. And it was kind of fun because Harold and I were coming off that really, really tough year at KBM, and I just wasn't sure what was gonna happen next. And like basically when I left Homestead at the end of 2013, I didn't think I was coming back. We were gonna find something else to go do. So I had been dabbling in some dirt racing, because when you're at RCR, you either have to hunt or race dirt, and I don't like getting up early. Right. So I wasn't going to hunt. So I went dirt racing.
Dylan and Ty had a lot of background in dirt racing before going to NASCAR.
Yeah, so they got me hooked on dirt racing. So Harold and I were like, okay, we're gonna kind of not part ways, but I wanted him to go focus on building whatever was going to come next. And at the time we were like, okay, we're gonna start this dirt team. And we called it Rum Runner Racing because we're all a bunch of amateur alcoholics from the Keys and love rum runners. So that's kind of when Rum Runner was born. And so Harold went to work starting to lay down our dirt team and get everything started there. Then the GMS thing started to come together, and basically RCR was getting rid of all their trucks, and I was like, if you want to get into truck racing and you want me driving, go buy that stuff, because I know it. Like, that was the best I ran. I know the system. Something
you're familiar with.
Yeah. Harold, will come in and consult and help get things going, and we got started. Jeff Stankiewicz came over as my crew chief, and it was challenging. Like, it was fun in a lot of ways because we were kind of, we were the new team on the block. We weren't, they didn't have any street cred. And it was fun because we started cranking out some pretty decent races and some pretty decent finishes. And, compared to what, the budgets we were running on at RCR and KBM, like, it was a pretty small budget for a team that wanted to be big. And it's just part of growing. And they, we had a few top fives. I think our first top five was at Dover. Spencer started running better in the ARCA stuff, started running some truck races. And then after 2014, basically they just, sponsorship wise, I wasn't drumming anything up. Allegiant was only going to do one truck. So I stayed over there as a manager for the 33 truck that Brandon Jones came in and drove. So I got to work behind the scenes on the managing part, which was incredibly frustrating, but also kind of fun. Because
why is that?
Because I wanted to drive. I was not ready to not race.
I could see it in your face.
I wasn't. And it's, again, it's one of those like life lessons, but like, I was so miserable just not driving because I still had all that fight in me, and that's what sent me dirt racing.
Hey, racers want to race.
Yeah.
Right.
And I was getting into more of the politics, and I don't want to call it the rent-a-ride aspect of it, but that's what it was evolving into, or the current business model, I guess would be the correct way to say it.
You have to bring money to the deal.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know.
And I just didn't like it anymore. They had brought the Ilmore package into ARCA, and I see a lot of benefit in it, but I also saw a lot of the craftsmanship disappear. Same thing with the bodies. Like, I understand the motivation for doing it, but I just didn't see it helping, really, you know. So I just kind of got kind of cynical about it and went dirt racing and was like, this is racing. Like, this is what it's supposed to be. Like, there's guys out here throwing millions of dollars running 100 times a year, and then they come down to Cherokee and get whooped by somebody in an open trailer that only races here on Friday nights. It's spectacular.
I know, I love that.
Like, I've never had lows that were so low and highs that were so high in a week. Like,
because it's amazing, because you can go out there and kick everyone's ass one week on the dirt, and then the next week you're chasing your tail.
Yeah, well, I like when they did the $1 million race at Eldora, and Davenport won it. He was in a B main the next night. Now, if I won $1 million on a Friday night, I would not function on Saturday. So I get it, but that's just how hard it is. Like, you can hit it one night and you make one change, one tire selection, or somebody else finds something,
or the track
changes. Yeah, right. Like, you're starting over, and there's so much grind in that kind of racing, and I had a blast, absolutely getting my ass kicked.
Right.
Like, but it was so rewarding when we put some races together and started winning a few races. Like, that's the thing, like, with Harold, that makes our relationship special, is every race car that we've worked on together, we've won it.
Mm-hmm.
And especially on the dirt side, like, that was just so rewarding, because we had put a bunch of time into it, a bunch of effort into it, and we finally started winning against some of the best in the South.
And it is very difficult going from pavement to dirt. It's not as difficult going from dirt to pavement, but I know what you mean, because I spent most of my life on pavement and then tried dirt racing. And then there's some nights you get out of the car and you go, can I even do this anymore?
Yeah.
Like, yeah.
I just did it a few weeks ago. I went to go, I ran up at Ultimate Motorsports Park in the Hunt the Front race.
Okay.
And it was funny because the last time I just kind of jumped in a dirt car was Bristol, which was stupid.
Why is that?
Because I hadn't driven one in like a year, and just hopped right off the couch and went to Bristol.
That must have been cool, though, to do Bristol as dirt, because technically you're one of the few guys that have run it at dirt and pavement.
Yeah,
right?
Yeah. It was really cool. Like, it was super cool. But I was just like, I told Harold after that, I'm like, if I call you with some harebrained idea to just come run a race, like, would you tell me to just shut up? So
talk some sense into me.
Yeah. So the last few months, I'm like, hey, like, I want to try to find a couple dirt races to come run, because I want to get back in it, see, just see if I've picked anything up or whatever. So I'm like, but let's be like tactical about it. Like, let's pick some tracks I've been to and all that. So, like, we went to Cherokee for a Southern All-Stars race, qualified 7th, and then broke an axle as soon as I drove onto the racetrack for the feature.
That sucks.
So then he calls me, says, hey, there's a $30,000 to win Hunt the Front race at Ultimate. You want to go? I'm like, yeah, let's go. I've been there before. I know it's a little different, but I know the racetrack. It's right up the road. Perfect. So we get there, and the racetrack just comes apart. Like, it gets rough. And holes in it. It rains. It gets more rough. And I'm out there bouncing around in the feature. Like, this is not how you come back to do that. And it's just, but that's, again, like, that is what makes dirt racing so awesome, is that there is no, I'm just going to show up and have a good night. Like, it doesn't work like that. Sometimes, yeah, fine. But you're going to get thrown all these curveballs, and if you don't do it all the time like those guys do, it is impossible to keep up.
I know what you mean, because it's frustrating, because like we said, one night you're good, one night you're bad. Then there are some of those guys in the pit area that are just fast every week. Doesn't matter if the track's dry or heavy or whatever. It's like, how the hell are you guys doing it?
It's just because that's what they do every week.
But it does make you better in the pavement car, without a doubt, because you start to get that feel, or I like to call it that lateral movement in your ass across the pavement, that you get a lot on dirt. And yeah, I when I went from running a dirt car and then hopped back into my father's midget, I got faster.
Yeah. I mean, when we showed up to Florence in that modified for the first time and everything went so well, on the driving side of things, like, I gave all of that credit to the dirt racing, because you have to show up to a track that you've never seen and you've got 3 laps of hot laps to figure it out and figure out what your car wants, and then go qualify and then heat race, and hopefully you get to run 50 laps. So my approach to that race at Florence was like, I was still in that dirt car mentality of like, I got to go out there and figure this out like right away, because the tires are going to go away, right? Like, you get 3 laps at Florence and it's shredded. So that all those lessons I learned about just how to show up and adapt and figure it out all came from dirt racing.
And adapt quickly.
Yeah.
Yeah, because it's not like pavement, because you only have a few laps of practice and then that's it. You go right into qualifying.
Yeah.
I know. I get it. But now running those pavement modified races, usually they're anywhere from 99 to 100 laps. Some tracks have tire management, some don't. Do you like the having to run it like, say, 70% most of the race and then going for it, or do you want to just do like these dirt late model races and go, balls to the wall for 30 laps?
I get torn. Now, like, for us at Wilkesboro last year, or year before last, whenever it was, that I didn't have a great time, because it was so bad on tires that you just could not run until the last 20 laps. But it was all new to everybody. Like, I don't know that we could have picked a different tire to take there. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. So like, when it's that level of tire management, I'm not a huge fan, because you're just running around in circles. And I know a lot of times from the fans, they can't, you can't see the difference, but I like racing a lot, so I would much rather keep the wick turned up. But like, this year we actually were just talking about it after Hickory. We're not riding around much like we were even the year before. Mm-hmm. Everybody's a lot more aggressive from the start. Everybody's chasing those stage points now. So I think it's a pretty fun little balance that we've got now, where guys are pushing. We're all being as smart as we can be, but there's not. I think the sort of panic that everybody would get in about saving tires is gone.
And you're still with Harold Hawley and Randy Renfro. Tell us about your relationship with them, or obviously you get along with both of them, but all 3 of you get along well together and work well together? Yeah,
and it's neat, because I'm really fortunate. I've kind of got 2 ends of the spectrum. Randy's really low key. He's got a really good process down, and it's worked across almost everything that he's raced. And he was a driver before he was a crew chief. So on the driving side of things, I can relate to him a lot, and then Harold's really aggressive, really intense, wound up sometimes, and he's 100% a crew chief and never driven anything. So it's neat to be able to work with both of those backgrounds. And then again, they work great together. And then this year, actually partway through last year, and then this year we brought on Eddie Traconis. And Eddie's been calling the races, a lot of the modified races for me the last year and a half. And Harold's been running the dirt stuff and just kind of overseeing the modified thing. So Eddie has kind of just dove right into this program too. And
he's your crew chief on race days.
Yeah, so okay. he's my crew chief on the modified side now. Mm-hmm. And that's been spectacular. And the funny thing about that was he was my race engineer at KBM. So okay. Small racing world, but really cool for him to kind of come back into the fold and us run good.
Yeah, it's said it a lot too. The racing world is it's a big business, but a small fraternity.
Yeah.
Because a lot of people know everyone knows everyone, but I mean, really look at the success you've had, though. I mean, you have won in everything: go-karts, trucks, modifieds, dirt late models. Is there any goal for you? Do you have any goals set, or is it now to just go and have fun?
It's always been about having fun, but for us and from the Rum Runner side and the Coulter Motorsports side, our goal is to just show up to a racetrack somewhere and everybody just go, "Ah, shit, they're here." Like,
Yeah.
And we're in a pretty neat situation because we do have a dirt team and we do have the modifieds. Ryan Newman's driving the 2-car with Randy on the Coulter Motorsports side. So it's just a really cool overall situation we got. And, we want to win. We want to be competitive no matter what it's in.
And how is it having Ryan as a teammate as far as information and all that? Because obviously he's raced at the highest levels. So have you. How you guys interact as teammates?
I mean, it's funny because he might be quieter than I am, which is impressive. But no, I mean it's awesome having him on the team because he does have a ton of experience. He's seen a lot of the way that the cars have evolved and some of the ways that they haven't, and he brings a whole bunch of experience to the table. Like it was kind of a really easy, like, just okay, let's go racing kind of thing. And we share notes back and forth after practice, but it's really simple. It's low maintenance, I guess is the best way to describe it. And then he's fun to race with. Like I hadn't been able to run with him much before the modified stuff, and it's fun.
That's cool. And he runs a whole bunch of different stuff too. I mean, he's going to run the little 500 this weekend, and then he's got a busy weekend this weekend. Actually, he's got the little 500, and then they've got qualifying for that this week.
Yeah,
he's got to fly back, do the modified race, and then I guess fly back to do the little 500.
Yeah.
That's what you should try next, a pavement sprint car.
Boy,
that would be right up your alley. I think you would. We
need to put something in here so that I know to pause it, so my wife doesn't hear that.
Well, then she probably doesn't want to hear that you should try super modified too.
Oh, so
Oswego.
That bucket list item number 1 right now.
Oh, super modified.
Super modified. Yeah.
Okay, all right. Well, I mean, if anyone from Oswego Speedway is listening, Joey Coulter wants to hop in a super.
Yeah. Well, I honestly don't know if it's true or not, but I heard they were going to bring super modifieds down for the North-South Shootout.
They are.
So
it's confirmed.
I'm interested.
Dude, I love super modifieds. Are one of my favorites too, man, because I don't know if you've ever seen them up close. They're just so wild and radical looking. They're just so technologically advanced, and they are probably one of the other cars besides a modified that just looks fast sitting still.
Yeah.
So
yeah. I was joking around with somebody. I said, but it looks like somebody built an Indy car behind their house.
Yeah.
And it's awesome. I love it.
The technology that's in them is just incredible. And the funny part is like there's so many differences between the Oswego type super modifieds and the ISMA type, because the Oswego ones are more like an Indy car where the suspension is inside, the tube body, everything's on cantilevers and push rods and everything. Yep. And the ISMA super modifieds are like shock perches all the way out here and all that's in the air. So yeah, there is a difference. That's for sure. Okay, so we won't tell your wife that you want to try a super modified. We won't tell your wife you want to try a pavement sprint car. Is anything else that we won't tell your wife you want to drive?
No, I think we're safe on the super modified thing because I really want to give that a shot. It's cool, man. Like at the end of the day, like I'm probably a way bigger race fan than most people know, and if it's got a steering wheel and some pedals, like I'll take a crack at it.
You'll drive it, okay?
Yeah.
Is there anything? What's your favorite car to hop into on the weekend? Out of all between dirt late model, pavement late model, truck, modified, whatever. What's your favorite one to hop in?
God, it's so tough. Like the dirt cars are just, they've got so much power. And like I'm a nerd for like what I call purpose-built race cars, right? Mm-hmm. So like stock cars, to me, it's a magic trick. You're taking a car that's not really supposed to do race car things, and you're making it do race car things. But like a dirt late model, even a modified, super modified, IndyCar, Formula One, IMSA type prototype, right? Those race cars were built to do that type of racing. Mm-hmm. And so I think if I really had to pick one, I'd probably have to pick the dirt car just because of the horsepower.
Yeah, that. Well, they do run dirt modifieds. I mean, they run those big block super dirt car modifieds. So that's a possibility too, right?
Yeah, sure.
All right, so we won't tell your wife you want to drive one of those too. Okay, so yeah, and that's the other thing too. You're married now. You've got 2 kids, and what happens if the kids come up to you and they say they want to race now?
I mean, I'm all for it. One of the I think the coolest things my parents did is they never pushed me to do one thing versus the other, but they always gave me an opportunity to try something. So whatever sport it is or whatever my interest was, they gave me an opportunity to go try it, but never pushed anything. But my oldest, she's getting ready to turn 8. She loves going to the racetrack, not super interested in doing it. But my 3-year-old is a complete terrorist. And she is...
The second child usually is, right?
And she is ate up with it. Like, she wants to be at the racetrack, on the race cars, in the race cars, doesn't matter. We put her down in Florida. They have this little series called the Juice Box Series. And it's a little 24-volt electric radio flyer go-kart. And we borrowed one to let her go run in it. And the first race didn't go so well.
At 3, at 3.
They have I think it's like 2 to 5, and they have different groups.
That's so funny.
But they just go run these little, they'll set tires up or cones up in the infield of these short tracks and go run. And
they're power wheels, right?
Yeah, basically, yeah. Yeah, and it's funny because you think, okay, it's like 3-4-year-old kids, like they're people that cheat, they have tech, I'm like, oh my gosh, here we go.
Even at that level.
Oh yeah, it's crazy.
It's unbelievable.
They don't even know they won the race, and the dads are fighting like soccer dads. It's great.
Oh my God! Look what you have to look forward to.
I know, right? Yeah. So when I did it, when I got that little cart and put it all together, it's my father-in-law is the one that brought it up. My wife was out of town, so I sent her a text of a picture of it, and I said, hey, just so you know, I put my retirement plan in play. And she's like, what are you talking about? I said, Addie's going to run the juice box race this weekend.
And has she said she wants to do it again?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, she does.
She's ready to do it again.
All right, so now you're screwed now.
Probably, yeah.
Probably, yeah. Okay, so the quarter midget is going to come next, or the outlaw
I don't know. I've got an odd relationship with quarter midgets. I had never been to a quarter midget race.
Yeah, it's a different crowd.
What fascinated me, and I don't mean to sound like I'm trash talking, but it made me laugh, is you got these cars, roll cages and everything, and then these parents will dump their kids out of the side of one.
I know.
And their heads bouncing off the pavement, and I'm like, man, I don't know about that.
I know, and it's so funny too because I brought it up a couple of times, and apparently that is like a big taboo can of worms you don't open in quarter midget racing, that with the kids leaning out of the cage. Because if you think about it, that's the only form of racing where the driver's hanging outside the car.
Right.
And I told my brother when my nephew was racing quarter midgets, we got him a LaJoy seat, I said, you make sure he sits upright in that. I said,
in the car.
If he starts leaning out of the cage, I'm not sponsoring the car anymore or anything like that. I didn't like that. I know it draws the ire of quarter midget parents when you bring that up because they complain because it's because of handling and all of that, whatever.
Yeah.
I know. I don't get that either. But I do like the outlaw kart stuff, the box stock, beginner box stock stuff. I don't know if you've ever been over to Millbridge or Mountain Creek Speedway. I mean, they get 25, 30 of those kids, man.
Yeah.
And first through 10th is separated by just a 10th.
Yeah.
I mean, it's tough. I couldn't believe it.
See, that's the thing. They get done doing that after a couple of years, and that's why they're ready to go jump in a super when they're 12.
I know. So. We're already seeing it with kids like Brent Cruz and Gavin Boschel. I mean, they cut their teeth at places like Millbridge, and now, I mean, Jesus, Cruz has an ARCA win already. Bochel's won in late models and midgets and sprint cars. So, yeah, that's the next thing.
Yeah.
We're getting close to the end of the show. You got any sponsors or anything you want to plug or promote coming up for this weekend or any other weekends?
I mean, we've been really fortunate. We've had a lot of the same people behind us for a long time, like Simpson Race Products, Molecule, everybody at all the biggest support comes out of that shop at Rum Runner Racing, because I'm in and out of there quite a bit. And again, I always have these harebrained ideas to just come run a race every once in a while. But
now, you're a co-owner of Rum Runner Racing, or do you drive for the team?
It depends on what decision needs to be made.
Okay.
So technically, it's me and my parents. Same. We all own Coulter Motorsports, and Rum Runner Racing is just the crazy spin-off of Coulter Motorsports. But I try to just keep things competition related and not make too many upper management decisions, because usually that bleeds into the competition decisions, and then I get somebody in trouble. But it's everybody at the shop, man. They do such a good job working on both types of cars and getting them up and down the road. But
yeah, and you guys always show up with very pristine, pretty looking cars. I mean, the crew is always on it, and yeah, I know you guys definitely you come correct when you come to the track to come race.
Yeah, that's if we can't leave the shop right, we're not going to leave the shop. We'll take the week off and go drink some Rum Runners or something. But
well, before we go, being that you are running the modified now, are there any of those special races that you want to run, like maybe the Race of Champions or the Spring Sizzler or the World Series? Or?
I have a good time going down to New Smyrna in February and running that. I want to start branching off and working up north. Like, I'd love to go to Stafford. I really want to go to Thompson. We're flirting with the idea of running New Hampshire next month.
Really?
I haven't hit that hard in a long time, so I don't know yet. But that's been something we really want to do. I love running the Smart Tour races, and I like going and running the Wheel and Tour stuff too. Another funny small world story. So Jimmy Wilson was the race director when I was racing Hooters Pro Cup.
I know Jimmy. He's a great guy.
That was kind of cool to show up and see that he was running that show and doing an awesome job with it. So yeah, I want to start working my way up north and running some of those bigger races. We got a couple more lessons we got to learn, I think, before we can go play with those guys.
I could definitely see you doing well at a place like New Hampshire, because you've got the big track experience, the drafting experience, and you've got guys that know what they're doing on the cars. So I think New Hampshire actually would probably be a really good fit for you. But Thompson, you're going to love Thompson. You're going to love Stafford when you go there. They are two awesome tracks.
Yeah, cool. I'm looking forward to it.
Well, Joey, thank you for coming in. We appreciate your time this week. It was awesome to have you here, and we'll definitely see you at the races this weekend.
Awesome. Thank you.
Cool. Joey Coulter joins us on the Derek Pernesiglio Show. We want to thank him and you for joining us. And remember to follow us on all of our social channels. You can look us up at the Derek Pernesiglio Show on YouTube and on Facebook. Then you can also follow us on Twitter. They call it X now. I still call it Twitter. Instagram and TikTok at Real DP Show. So for Joey Coulter, I'm Derek Pernesiglio saying thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you the next time. Bye.